Hi, I'm Abby. I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back to Vinyl Monday. This is my first video of 2023, and it feels good to be back. Have to say I wasn't missing sitting on the floor for a couple hours too much, but I did miss talking about albums that I love. If you're new here, hi, this is my series where once a week I sit down and talk about a record that I love. If 20-minute episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds, both here on my channel as well as over on my Instagram. A status update from my last video, because I think you could see my sanity slowly fading on camera. Yes, my light bulb is replaced, and yes, as of December 21st, 2022, I have a closet again. Anyway, this week's record, not wasting any more time, is The Velvet Underground and Nico. Congrats to those who guessed this one. Remember, if you want a hint as to what album I'm going to be covering next week, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post all of the fun stuff, including a running count of how many videos it takes me until I swear 5 times in one video, thus completing the full opening chord progression of the Beach Boys' Our Prayer. If this, by chance, is your first week, good luck, buddy. Gets weird in these parts. If this is your first week here, don't worry, my fake eyelashes aren't always this crazy. I'm just in my Chelsea girl best for this video. I love dressing for a theme. The Velvet Underground and Nico is one of my most requested albums on this channel. I'm not gonna lie to you, this will be a daunting task, and I really hope it lives up to the expectations. So let's kick 2023 off on Vinyl Monday with an inaugural removing of the plastic. This is one of the most iconic pieces of cover art ever designed, and as you can tell by the big fat text in the bottom right hand corner, this was painted by Andy Warhol. Ugh, Andy Warhol. Yeah, unfortunately for me, he's gonna be a pretty major player in this week's episode. No, this album is not called Andy Warhol. No, Andy Warhol was not in the Velvet Underground. And no, Andy Warhol did not assemble the Velvet Underground. Had to get all of that out of the way first. My copy is a repress, and it doesn't have the original concept of this album art. As you can see, this is all just flat right here. The original concept was that this banana was a sticker that you could peel away to reveal a pink banana. My repress doesn't have this sticker. Most represses don't, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why they don't. It's a great gimmick, it's fun, and it's surely a lot less expensive to reproduce than I left it all the way on the other side of the room, which is blockaded by various pieces of furniture that I must move to clear my filming space. But over there is my original Sticky Fingers cover with the zipper. Original banana cover, a lot less expensive to mass produce, so I don't know why they stopped doing it. There were 2 separate lawsuits surrounding this album art. One over the back cover, in which Eric Emerson sued to have his likeness removed from this projection of Warhol's Chelsea Girls film. Instead of a liquid light show, the Velvet Underground crew decided to project Chelsea Girls in the back of their performances. And the second lawsuit, in which the business side of the Velvets sued the Andy Warhol Foundation for licensing this album art without the band's permission. On the Velvet's debut record, we have Lou Reed on guitar and vocals, John Cale on viola, bass, and keys, Sterling Morrison on guitar, and Maureen Tucker on drums. We have a special guest on this album. You might have guessed who it is, seeing as her name is in the title. we have Nico providing vocals. She sings lead on Femme Fatale, All Tomorrow's Parties, and I'll Be Your Mirror, and backing vocals on Sunday Morning. And this record was produced by Andy Warhol. The back-to-back mentions of Warhol and Nico are a perfect segue into the story of recording and producing VU and Nico. Yes, I'm going to be calling this thing VU and Nico. I won't call it self-titled because, well, there is a self-titled Velvet Underground record. I'm also not just calling it VU because, well, there's also a record called VU. There's a lot of self-titled records to juggle with this group, so I'm just shortening it to VU and Nico for my own sake. So the Velvets had already been a group for a year or so before they ran into Andy Warhol. He was their manager from 1965 through 1967, and he had a vision. Warhol's overarching vision was to bring high art down to the masses and to make art pop culture. In his mind, anyone could consume art, anyone could make art, anything could be art, and art was everywhere, even in Brillo or Campbell's soup cans. He loved pop culture. He was a pop culture fiend, and for that, I guess I kind of relate to him. Part of this vision was to make the Velvets, as avant-garde as they were, into a mainstream pop success. In order to give the Velvets a more pop polish, Warhol inserted his latest superstar into the group, German singer and model Nico. Not unlike yours truly, Nico's voice did not match her face at all, whereas mine is a little more cartoonish. Hers was haunting and morose. She had this, British mod look, but with a New York beatnik appeal and this vaguely European accent that made her a little bit hard to understand. And most important to Warhol, she was platinum blonde. As far as he was concerned, she was it. She was the next big thing, and she was gonna skyrocket the Velvets into superstardom. Did this pan out? We're getting there. For a while, Warhol and the Velvets, plus Nico, had this kind of symbiotic relationship. The Velvets would perform at a lot of Warhol's events, including the Exploding Plastic Inevitable and a wedding happening. And Warhol's weight in the art world helped the Velvets gain a small following, enough for them to be signed to Verve Records. For their first album, Warhol would serve as their producer, and the band would set up shop in Scepter Studios in New York. Now, Warhol was the producer in the sense that he was more like a film producer, right? He provided the budget, and he would sit in on sessions as a normal record producer does, but instead of giving guidance or helping with mixing, saying what's right and what's maybe going wrong, he would sit in and okay anything the band came up with. John Cale said he'd sit there and just kind of go, wait, I need my Warhol sunglasses for this. He'd just kind of go, oh, that's fantastic. And then he'd turn to an audio engineer and say, oh, wasn't that just fantastic? And the audio engineer, in the presence of Andy Warhol, who clearly had to know something about art, would go, yeah, fantastic, way to go. Once MGM realized what this unfettered madness was going to sound like, Tom Wilson was sent in at the last minute to slam something vaguely commercial together for this record, and that song was Sunday Morning. Where Warhol didn't interfere with studio goings-on, he placed himself in the songwriting process. A few of these songs were written at Warhol's request. I'll Be Your Mirror, sung by Nico, was inspired by Nico herself, and Femme Fatale was kind of a backhanded compliment to Edie Sedgwick. Edie Sedgwick was a model, actress, dancer, and Warhol's favorite superstar from 1965 through 66. At this point, while the Velvets were recording VU and Nico, Warhol and Edie's codependent, toxic friendship was imploding spectacularly. Andy was very much a fair-weather friend to his superstars, and Edie was weathering a hurricane, and her mental health plagued her throughout her entire life. This, no doubt, was exacerbated by the heavy drug use that permeated the factory and everyone who floated around it. Basically, if you were flying in these artist circles in New York in the 60s, there was a pretty good chance you were hooked on heroin, which is where we get to Heroin, the song. Lou Reed wrote this about his own addiction. Lou wasn't by any means the first to be writing about drug use, but he was one of the first to write about doing the less glamorous drugs. I mean, the Beatles at this point were smoking pot and doing acid. That was practically child's play right now. Heroin? Nobody was writing about that. Lou studied English while he was in college, and he works a lot of literary references into his material. Note Venus in Furs on this album. I'm Waiting for the Man, also about heroin addiction. There She Goes Again, that's a song about prostitution. There are some dark themes on this record. The seedy underbelly of the New York art scene and the unfettered madness that Warhol let happen in the studio produced The Velvet Underground and Nico. The track listing goes as follows. Opening up side 1, you have Sunday Morning, followed by I'm Waiting for the Man. Then Femme Fatale, followed by Venus in Furs, then Run, 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 and side 1 closes with All Tomorrow's Parties. Opening up side 2, you have Heroin, followed by There She Goes Again, then I'll Be Your Mirror, followed by the Black Angels' Death Song, and the album closes with European Sun. VU and Nico was first released in March of 1967. There was a pause due to the Emerson lawsuit, in which the album didn't sell over the summer and into the fall, but it was back on the market by November. And hey, Keith Moon? Yeah, you want a group that goes over like a lead balloon? Yeah, Velvet Underground? This is it! This record was a commercial flop upon release. It charted a couple times, but very low. This was purely for people buying it out of morbid curiosity. And also because Andy Warhol's name is right here. It was way too out there for mainstream pop radio, making it perfect for underground radio. But here's the thing, that didn't really exist yet. Underground radio was still in its infancy here in the US. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Vinyl Monday first. I had to get up and get more water halfway through. Yeah, I ate a fish sandwich and some French fries left over for lunch this morning. Yeah, I'm struggling. Basically, VU and Nico wasn't the commercial success that Warhol had hoped for at all. At least not yet. Any attempt at commercial appeal failed miserably. It went about as well as Zappa trying to make a commercial pop group out of the GTOs. This is Freak Out by the Mothers of Invention. It's the most similar record I can think of to VU and Nico, which is hilarious seeing as Lou Reed and Zappa hated each other. And wait, if you don't know about the GTOs, oh my god, fix that! If you like the wackier elements of VU and Nico, definitely check out Permanent Damage by the GTOs. You might get something out of it. Anyway, back to the Velvets. After VU and Nico's release, the Velvets were growing tired of Warhol's nonsense, so they fired him as their manager. Brian Eno famously said only 30,000 copies of VU and Nico were sold in the early years, but everyone who bought one of those 30,000 copies formed their own band. Even if his math was slightly off, the sentiment was still there. VU and Nico is one of the most influential albums ever made. I know I'm prone to hyperbole, but no, this is literally one of the most influential records of all time. It's influenced any number of punk bands, even more new wave bands, Brian Eno, who I just mentioned, David Bowie, The Modern Lovers, Joy Division, Sonic Youth, The Violent Femmes, Beck, REM, The Strokes, and so many more can all trace some aspect of their artistic origins back to VU and Nico. The 80s and 90s played out the way they did, due in part to VU and Nico. This thing was light years ahead of its time. You could argue that this, along with The Doors' self-titled, are early examples of alternative rock. You could also argue that VU and Nico is a proto-punk album, and like him or not, Warhol and the environment he created, which undeniably fostered this album, remains influential in rock music today. I think of St. Vincent's recent-ish release, Daddy's Home. The whole thing is inspired by The Factory, New York in the 60s and 70s, the Chelsea Hotel, but especially inspired by Candy Darling. Both Edie and Candy were beautiful women with so much love in their hearts and so much life to live, and they deserved so much better in their lives. So much better than Andy fucking Warhol. So, what do I think of VU and Nico? Going in, oh man, this record challenges the hell out of me. This has challenged me. I went to art school, right? And I was surrounded by people who were a lot more cultured than me. So I felt like I had to like this record. That's why I bought this copy at a Newbury Comics when I was like 18 or 19 years old. No, it was for my 19th birthday. I bought this because I felt like I had to own it and like it to be taken seriously. The Velvet Underground are also one of my favorite groups of the 60s. Loaded is one of my favorite albums, hands down. No doubt about it, this album is weird. It's not Silver Apple's weird, but it's still pretty weird. I'm gonna break down the 3 reasons why VU and Nico challenges people. Number 1, Lou Reed's voice. Remember my impressionistic singing comment from my Blonde on Blonde video in November? Yeah, Lou Reed is the king of that. He picks a note he would like to hit, kind of throws his voice out there, and if he doesn't hit the note, he doesn't fucking care. He's Lou Reed. But here's the thing. I've observed a kind of axis that male songwriters exist on. Either you have a really good voice, or you're a really good songwriter. It's very, very rare that a man is both. Women, very common. Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, both incredible writers, and they sing like angels. Dylan, Lou Reed, not so much. Number 2, Nico's voice. Nico sounds like a death march. She can be intriguing, she can be charming, but she can also be a real drag. Monotone, monotone, monotone. But I do love how androgynous her voice is. It's almost mannish. Never underestimate the power of an alto on your record. And number 3, the viola. This is what challenges me. It's grating, man. It makes the atmosphere of songs like Venus in Furs or Heroin, and it completely ruins Black Angel Death Song. Congratulations to John Cale for providing the most complex and eternally head-spinning facet of VU and Nico. Sunday Morning is meant to lull you into a false sense of security. It certainly did for me. I love the goofy backing vocals. It's pretty and quintessentially Velvet's. And then it all goes to hell. I like I'm Waiting for the Man a lot, but I do struggle with it. and that is because of the piano and the tambourine. They were added in and pushed really far forward in the mix, and I think that's to make up for the drums being totally shot in this recording. The drums are totally blown out. You can't hear them. You don't even hear the bass until the very end of the song. The piano and tambourine is very staccato, and it's very percussive the whole way through, and it can wear one's patience thin. Once you get past that, it's some of the best songwriting on the album. God, this album's mix is fucked. I get that's part of the charm, but sometimes I wish there were more moments like Sunday Morning. One can be worn down by this onslaught of chaos. I know that's pretty rich coming from me and the music I listen to on my downtime. This is total assault on the ears by any means necessary. Venus in Furs is one of my favorite songs, period. Not just on this album, but by any group. But it wasn't the original that made me appreciate it. It was the Smashing Pumpkins cover. Back when Smashing Pumpkins were doing kind of a gothy psych thing, they did a version of Venus in Furs, and it's one of my all-time favorite covers. Yeah, this tends to happen with Lou Reed songs. They're just blank enough of slates that an artist can cover them and kind of put their own signature on it while still being challenged to measure up to the original of the song. That's Smashing Pumpkins' Venus in Furs, David Bowie's I'm Waiting for the Man, you know, stuff like that. As much as the meandering and the chaos can be to handle, it really works on Heroin. Heroin, it's my wife, it's my life, is one of the most haunting moments on any record from 1967, or any song about addiction. It sums it up perfectly. Lou Reed's songwriting is essential to VU and Nico. Sure, it can read as pretentious at times, but it holds a mirror to some of the ugliest parts of the human experience. It holds us in front of how we exploit others and how we exploit ourselves, and it doesn't let us turn away. VU and Nico's delivery is a baffling combination of passive and confrontational. As whacked out as European Sun is, it's the most classically psych tune on the record. You know, switch around some of the instrumentation, maybe take out the glass breaking, or actually leave that in, and it's your classic 1967 psychedelic freakout. I think I understand why this record sounds the way it does. Partly because Warhol didn't mess with the creative process. As much as I dislike Warhol, I do respect that he did that. And partly because the Velvets illuminate the disgusting. VU and Nico shocks you at every level, even if that's not at all what Lou intended to do. I understand why people are apprehensive about this thing, and why it's so divisive, but I encourage you to give this record a try. Go into it with an open mind, and do whatever you have to do to get the most out of it. Yes, that includes skipping Black Angel Death Song. VU and Nico was a hard record to understand in 1967. It still is now. Is that a testament to its greatness or its absurdity? I am not qualified to say that much. But I can say this is polarizing. This is grotesque. You want to turn away from it. I did for a while, but that would be taking the easy way out. If you can get past how crunchy and repulsive this record can sound, dare I say it's an experience. A layered media experience. That's rare for 2022. It might still be rare in 2023 when I post this. Will it continue to be? Who knows? VU and Nico will always keep us guessing. My personal favorites on this one are I'm Waiting for the Man, Femme Fatale, Venus in Furs, Heroin, and I'll Be Your Mirror. If you want to keep up with the faves, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description of all of my favorite songs from every Vinyl Monday I've ever done, even before I was doing this on YouTube. And that is the good, the bad, the ugly, and the Velvet Underground and Nico. What do you think of this record? You should leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about the albums that I love, and I know you are gonna have a lot to say about VU and Nico. And if you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye. I mean...